Al McCauley, and I want to welcome you to Fish on Fridays. And today I want to talk to you about the concept of grace. It's a great theological term that, we've kind of reduced it and don't maybe understand what it is. Obviously, we say grace, and we talk about the prayer before meals as grace. But there's a much deeper, richer tradition and understanding of that term that I'd like to talk about today. Grace is just simply defined. It's God's ever-present help that's given to us even though we don't deserve it, and it's free. God's freely given help, God's freely given presence to us undeserving, sinful humans. That's what grace is. And St. Paul talks a lot about this in his epistles, in many of his epistles, from Galatians to Romans. He talks about the nature of grace as being something that can help us overcome sin. And it's important because he talks about and differentiates, St. Paul does, between following the law and accepting or cooperating, working with God's grace. When we follow the law, none of us do. We all break the law. We're sinful people. So to act as though the law can save us is kind of foolish. And so St. Paul tells us what we have to do is have faith in Christ and rely on his grace to save us. That's very important. For St. Paul, the law identifies sin. It tells us what's wrong, but it doesn't save us. It's like if you were to fall down and have a real bad pain in your arm, and you go to the doctor and they take an x-ray. The x-ray is the bad news. It tells you what's wrong. You have a break. Now, no good doctor in his right mind or her right mind is going to send you out of the office without doing something about it. The x-ray is like the law. It tells us what's wrong, but it doesn't cure it. It's grace that provides the cure. It's grace that is the good news. And grace is flowing constantly. St. Augustine in the late 4th century, early 5th century, I love St. Augustine, and he talks about grace a lot. And he uses a word, cooperation, that we have to co-work with God's grace. That its impact to us is saving. It's life-saving. It is what saves us. And we are not the source of it, but we need to cooperate it out of our free will. We have to accept it. So this is my analogy I would use. If you ever walk into a room that's absolutely pitch black, okay? There are other people in the room, there's furniture in the room, and you know that, but you can't get out. If you wanted to leave, what's going to happen is you're going to bump into each other, and you're going to hurt each other. You're going to bump into furniture, and you're going to hurt yourself, because we're walking around in darkness. Now, hopefully, you would recognize that there is electricity coursing through the wires that are in the walls and that are attached to these things we call lights. And if you can grope your way to the wall and find a switch and flip the switch, all of a sudden now there's light. And if you were to leave the room, you're going to have a much easier time walking out without hurting each other and without hurting yourselves, because ultimately that's what we want. We want to walk in the light. Now, here's the key point, though, about grace. When we flip the switch, we are not the source of the grace. All we've done, as Augustine would say, is we cooperate or co-work with God's grace. We are not the source of it. It's freely given from Jesus to us to help us, to draw us closer to himself. In 2005, there was a romantic comedy movie that came out starring Will Smith, and it's called Hitch. And if you've not seen it, that's fine, but there's a scene. His character in the movie, he plays a consultant who tries to help average men be successful in relationships with pretty women, basically. And so he's like a coach, a life coach of sorts. And there's a very, very funny scene in that when he is talking to a character played by Kevin James, and he's trying to show him how to give a kiss on a first date, or a first kiss on a date. And the scene is just hilarious. And in it, Will Smith says, the key to a good kiss is to go 90% of the way toward the woman. And then Kevin James' character says, and what? And he says, and wait for her to come the other 10%. Now, it's kind of a weird analogy, but that's what grace is. God comes 90% of the way. He does all the work. He has done all the work. And all we need to do is come 10% of the way and accept it and cooperate and work with God's grace. It's grace that helps us to overcome sin. Like the great spiritual song says, it was grace that saved a wretch like me. It's grace that helps us in our day-to-day activities to overcome those tendencies to sin, what we call original sin. It's grace that helps us to realize Christ in others and to bring Christ in others. You know the saying, you are what you eat. I would say that what you take in animates you. And if you take in bad stuff, you're going to bring out bad stuff, give out bad stuff. And so if we inhale God's grace and we're aware of God's grace and presence in our lives, we're going to have a lot better chance to exhale and produce love. And that's really what we're called to do as Christians. Thanks for watching. If you don't mind sharing this with somebody who you think might be helped by it, please feel free to do so. If you want to leave comments or questions, that's something else you can also do. I hope you'll keep tuning in for Fish on Fridays. Until next time, please be good to each other, and God bless.